Hello ladies, welcome to Homemakers Radio. I'm creating these videos for you to listen to, although I will show you a few things first before you get busy. I just thought you might like to have a little company while you work, and I'll try not to get in your way. I do want to help you to feel good about homemaking and about getting ready for it. And I am just honored that you would come and listen, and it's really my privilege to speak to you. I love this medium of the videos because now we can reach people that might not be able to come to our homes. And I had noticed before the internet came, back in the olden days, that people were not coming as much to other people's homes or to ladies' get-togethers, teas, and classes. It was rather fading at the time, but now we can connect again, and actually maybe what we say is more effective because it can be recorded and it can be listened to again even throughout the generations. So I'm leaving a lot of this for the record. And today I'm going to show you, before you go, I'm happy to tell you I have finished one of my sewing projects. I'm staying home now. I've been home since July the 6th or 7th. And everybody kind of understands, and they're not pressuring me as much to go. But it seems like whenever I decided, I just need to stay home and not be going out on errands and try to do as many things by mail, try to do as many things that I can get other people to do to enable me to do more at home that I just can never seem to get on top of. And I have begun to sew up my sewing projects. This has been cut out for several years, and it's 100% cotton, and I got the fabric from Hobby Lobby several years ago. It's still there, and it's called Classic Cottons, and used to be online. I'm not sure you can get it, but I am excited to show you that the lady, the anonymous, Mrs. Anonymous, who sent me a set of 6 teacups and saucers, sent me this, and I knew right away. I have saved this for this day. I knew right away that I had some fabric somewhere that went with this, and I'm so excited about it. I'm happy about it to show this to you. I'll show you both of these things in a photograph on the blog. I'd like you to go over to my blog to listen to this, for which I'll provide a link. And I don't have comments here on YouTube. I just don't want to manage too many places online. So you can just go over to my blog where I keep everything, and you can see my friends on the blog roll and have a nice atmosphere and leave a comment if you like. Now, this might not be for everybody, but I'll tell you what, there's not going to be as much commotion over women wanting to be home, wanting to teach their children at home, because they, by necessity, have had to do this in the last few months. And so there's not going to be so much criticism from people who don't agree with it as there once was. So we've got that, don't we? Isn't that nice? You don't have to fight that off while we're trying to do a good job at home and while we're trying to be home. And so, first of all, I divide this into 3 sections so far, and then I add more, like I'm going to homeschool some of you. I don't care if you're over 50. I'm going to homeschool some of you. And this is for the very young too, because I have something to talk to you about today about children. And I divide it into 3 sections, and if you'd like to go now and start folding something or sorting something or cleaning something, then I invite you to do that while you listen. And the 3 sections are get ready. That means preparation. That means get dressed. And the next one is actual homemaking, maybe a few hints. Maybe we'll discuss a philosophy behind it or some kind of inspiration. And then the third would be dealing with people and getting along at home. It might even involve courtesy, manners, things like that. I don't have any particular etiquette. You can always look that up on another site. And so I'm going to talk about dressing today, because I finished this dress, and it's for the home. We don't go anywhere, and the Queen is not coming. So I'm just going to wear my clothes that are nice at home, and I'm not going to wear a t-shirt and jeans anymore, because I think we should also dress for mood and for the weather and for the occasion. And I feel like in the morning, if I wear something like this, that I'm just going to spend the first part of the day presiding. That means checking out everything around the house to see what will need to be done. I might carry a little notebook with me and put it in my apron pocket, and as I discover things that need to be done from room to room. And I will write a list based on the most urgent thing that needs to be done first. I have a list in my bathroom too, because I don't want to write it down every day, but I have to remind myself to do a few things with myself. I'll floss my teeth, I'll brush my teeth, I'll do my skincare, and I wish I had brought something over here to the table of skincare to show you, but we can talk about that later. And then I will go get my cup of tea and go outside, take a walk, kind of survey the situation outside, see what needs to be done out there on the property, in the flower garden, in the vegetable garden, or just in general, the front porch, anything that needs to be looked at, and take a mental note of what needs to be done or write it on my list. And it's amazing to me how dressing for mood helps. Like today, I kind of felt like yellow. I just felt like I needed to have something sunny and bright. This is a rather pale yellow, and I have not finished the hat that I made to match and the scrunchie. Now scrunchies, I was told, those are those little stretchy fabric things you make up, you tie around your hair to hold it back. I was told in the early 90s that scrunchies, no, can't wear those anymore. They're out, they're old, they're hokey. And now I've discovered on Pinterest people are making them to match their clothing or to tie their hair back. It's an inexpensive way to get a hair accessories. And I love those plastic clips, claw clips, but they break. They just don't last very much. And if they're too heavy and they're too strong, they'll slide through my hair. So I've had to go back to the scrunchies. So I have a scrunchie cutout and a hat, but the reason I haven't finished it is this. My advice to myself has always been go and do the accessories first. Make the hair bow with the clip on it, make the scrunchie, make the handbag, make the hat. If you've got accessories going, if you've even made a little petticoat that goes with it, do all those things first because they give you a sewing warm-up and they're small enough projects you can finish them. Because the dress itself sometimes takes a long, long time, and by the time I'm finished with the dress, I'm not enthusiastic about going and making a hat, but I had it cut out and I wanted to finish it. But that's just my advice, is get the little things done first too. And it's the same with homemaking, ladies. Do some little things. If you just can't seem to get into something, move something, wipe something, clean something. Just pick something up and put it where it goes. And just do some little thing as a warm-up. And that way, as you go through the little things, the bigger things seem to be smaller and not so daunting. And so now I want to talk a little bit about how important the home has become recently. Have you felt that? That the home has become so much more important to people. They are fixing them up. They have better curb appeal. People are planting their gardens, and some have winter gardens, and just painting them, rearranging inside, having a different look. And as they spend more time in the house, many more hours, then they start to realize, we could change this around a little bit. Give it a little variety, give it a little interest. We can, excuse me, we still have haying going on across the field over there. I have the doors open, it's very hot, so I'm choking on the chaff that comes in. And anyway, and we're grateful for this kind of weather too. It has its downside, but you in Australia, you're coming in, you're going to be your turn pretty soon. You're going to have hot weather, and so don't complain about the rain, and being indoors means that you don't have two things to do, because when summer comes, the work is doubled. You have your indoor work and your outdoor work. Anyway, the importance of the home. People are starting to see how important it is that things work, that things run smoothly, that things are convenient, that you can go through your house with a feeling of that it operates smoothly, and that it has that everything has to have a function and everything has to have a place, because you're not just making a lick and a promise at everything while you get ready to go somewhere else. And one of the things that being home a lot can accomplish is it can settle your mind in a way that you start to become more observant, more introspective, and more creative. And rushing around kind of takes that away and brings the tension in. And one of the things I noticed about not going out so much, now we can, and people are always trying to tell me, oh, will you go to the grocery store with me? and I decline. I've sent everybody else out. But one of the things that I've noticed is that when I can compare now that I've been home quite a while, is when I came home from just a simple little errand to the grocery store, the post office, the gas station, things like that, I was unable to breathe as well, and I also had this, my mind kind of wouldn't settle down. It just kind of swirled around, and there's a lot of head noise. Well, you know, it's the noise that you have commercially inside of a business. They've always got some kind of music, or my father used to call it noisic, because you couldn't hear the words. It's just a bunch of noise, and you come home with that in your head. It's amazing how that is. You know how when you go to church and you're singing a hymn, or you're listening to these hymns that I put on my blog, they run through your mind again. Well, something's going to run through your mind, so why not have something good run through your mind? If it's going to play itself and replay itself, that's just the way the mind is. And, you know, our memories come through and replay. That's why I think it's very good to try to create happy memories and carefreeness in your home, and free your home from worry, and have happy memories, because those are going to replay themselves in your mind. Well, this is what happens from going out so much, is that it takes a while to concentrate and to focus on the home and all the things you need to do. You need to get your kitchen clean, and you need to focus on, you know, where do I start? You start running around in circles and your head isn't settled down. The less noise and distraction you can get from out there, the world that is that's out there. And I'm not saying it in trying to say that you have to cut yourself off from the world, because, you know, we still have our share of it. We can get on the internet and we can order things, but we have a choice. We can just turn it off. Turn off a site that we don't like, or just turn it off. But when you're in town and you're in a grocery store, you can't prevent what they do, what they say, and what the noise is coming out of the intercom. And I have noticed that I have felt so much better. And ladies, in the home, I have a routine where I go from the kitchen around to the dining room and of course at night I'd like to leave it clean, but it's not always possible. You know, somebody else is staying up later than I am and maybe leaving a little bit of a mess. But in the morning I like to check out the kitchen, make sure that that's clean and sanitary, and I am very careful of my drains, and I make sure stuff doesn't go down there. We don't have, we're out in the country. We have to be very careful and protect our plumbing. And I check out the laundry, and I go to the bathroom, check that out. And so I kind of do a routine around looking to see what needs to be done. And I do keep a list. I really like having a list. I don't have a time schedule on it, though, because then I would rebel and not do what I told myself to do. I'm just not very good at obeying myself. So the home, of course, is where your base is. And I have created a bunch of appointments with myself. And at a certain time of day, I go down the hall to the library, and I take out 4 books, and I'll look at them, dust them off, dust out the area that they were in, decide whether I want to keep them or not, to see if they're any use to me. And if the book is torn up or falling apart, and because a lot of the books I bought actually were used in the first place, so if it is just not very usable and no one else in the family is interested in it, and if it has a bad musty smell that I can't get out of it, I will take note of what the book was, and if I want it, I will order a brand new book for myself, and then when it comes, I'll throw the old one away or put it out on a table for someone who wants it. Now I have a free table out in the front of the house by the little road there, and people stop and pick up what they want, and it's all free. But I have noticed something, and that is, even if a book is brand new, no one takes the books. They're just not interested. They haven't got time to read them, or they just don't have the leisure time. Our parents used to spend hours on their time off reading, laying around and reading. We would take books to the beach and sit under an umbrella or some kind of shelter and just read. And I suppose they're too busy with other things, but they won't take the books. And so that's how I get rid of it. And then at the end of going through all these books, I am going to have a clean bookshelf that has been repainted, refreshed, and smells good and is shiny and clean. And I am going to have a library full of new books if I can get a hold of them. Now, I also, then at a certain other time, I don't have a time schedule, but it's on my list. I take another trip down to one of the rooms on the right at the end of the hall, and I go to my exercise room. It's just a little space I've created in one of the bedrooms, and one of the guest room to be exact, where I roll out my exercise mat, and I tune in to some exercises. I've been following a lady in Australia called Fabulous 50s. Now, a lot of these exercises, I have to warn you, are not all for you, and we're not all alike, and I will maybe do two of each one or something like that. And also, I don't like if I don't like the background music, or they always try to give you a pep talk, but if I don't care for it, I'll just turn the volume off and watch the exercises and try to emulate them. So I go down to my exercise room and I do my exercises, and I do stretch. I try to find as many stretching exercises as I can that I can learn, and I'm not going to be doing jumping jacks, and I'm not going to run, but there are a lot of walking exercises. And so Mr. S will come and say, well, what are you doing today? And I'll say, well, at 2 o'clock I'm hoping to go to my exercise class. And then on certain days I have a cooking class, and when it's somebody that just posts a new cooking demonstration on his or her YouTube video, and I will see it come up and I'll think, oh, I want to do that. So I'll look for the ingredients, send Mr. S out to get all the ingredients for me, and I'm going to have my cooking class. And of course he just loves that because he knows he's going to get a meal. And so I have, and then I have my art class. So that's back in my sewing and craft room. So I go down there for my art class. So it's really interesting to see how the home can serve you. It's an entertainment center. It's a center of hospitality. It's a center of creativity. It's a center of learning, and it's a center of talents, of learning talents. And behind me, you'll see that I have an old piano. Well, we got this for the children when they were growing up. It wasn't expensive, and someone wanted to get rid of it, so we got it. But of course, Mr. S and I never learned how to play. Well, now we're going to learn. And so there are just so many things that you can do with the home. It's also a center for rest, and it's a center for a feeling of safety and freedom. And so that's why people are spending more and more time securing their homes, making it so that things won't break down, and so that they can make things work. Make sure the other day I had a little trouble with the washing machine, and the water was cutting off. And it's interesting how the new machines now have, I think it was Whirlpool. I was watching the other day some news about Whirlpool, and that is their water isn't restricted when it comes through the pipes. And I like that sort of thing. That's important to people, everyday life. Now, I also wanted to show you, now speaking of exercise, one of the classes that I take has weights. Well, I don't want weights. I've had weights around here before, and they just don't, there's nowhere to put them in the manse, and exercise equipment does not appeal to me at all. It doesn't go with anything. So with my puny wrists, I guess really can't order weights, and I found something that is, I believe this is 1 pound, okay, and she recommended 1 pound weights. So these are my 1 pound weights, refried beans, Rosarita. And no one wanted these kind. They were vegetarian, and they don't like them, and somehow we got a couple of them, so I'm just using them for my weights for the arm and wrist exercise. So there you go. And they look good in the cupboard. Just go get them when I need them. And so now I want to talk to you a little bit about children and books, and not just books but pictures. And if you have children or grandchildren, I just picked this book up it was in it's one of my children's books, so I'm going to have to give it up. But there was a picture on the front, and this is one of those Brownlow books. And there's a picture of the front, and it's two little children sitting on two chairs with an umbrella, and they have a string or rope attached to a rocking horse. And I thought, I have seen my children do things like this, and we used to do things like this, only with us it was trains, and it was boats, and other things, or a car. We would just put the chairs together, and then pretend we were looking out the window at the scenery, and play and play and play. And one of my grandchildren went outside and tied a sheet at each end to two little trees, and sat in it and pretended she was in a boat, and she was rowing, and pretended she was going somewhere down the river. And I've seen this so many times with children. We need to see these old pictures and these old paintings. But to sit with a child and say, what do you see in the picture? What are you doing? And just a minute, I see something that I brought to the table, but it's a little bit at a distance, so I have to leave you for a minute. What is going on in the picture? Now, one of the things that I was privileged to have was a mother who read to me and who showed me things. She was always one to show you when something, a cloud, what the cloud looked like, or just show you something outside, or show you the stars, or show you the first snowfall. And so we learned to observe. And so I would take a child and I would say, what do you see? What are the children doing? What are they wearing? What's that over there? What is that toy? And what do you think they're doing? Well, you know, then they learn. They learn what children do. And this one here is a picture of, this is called Once Upon a Memory, Reflections of Childhood, and it's by the Brownlow Publishing Company. Little boy is smelling some flowers that looks like his sister has picked. It's so precious. And what did they find? He's looking at something that she has. And what did they find? And they have collected a lot of these old paintings. And it didn't say who did them. I mean, it didn't say who the artists were. But many pictures in here of children, and they're doing something, and they're playing with something. And I would just sit with a child that really didn't care if I read or not, or didn't care about the story, and just ask, what are the children doing? Well, here's a picture. It's so sweet and innocent. She's just showing something she drew. And she drew a picture of, it looks like a goose. She's just showing something that she drew. I would just sit with a child and say, I would tell them what it is. Well, there's an umbrella, there's two chairs, there are two children, and there's a little, it's not a rocking horse, it's a little toy horse on wheels, and they're pretending this or that. And then after you tell them what is in the picture, then later on you can ask them what is in the picture, or what is in another picture. Now, I've done that all of my life, and so during my downtime when I have to, sometimes I'll get a little stiff because I'm sewing, or I've got doing a lot of things in the kitchen, and then I'll start to feel a little discombobulated. I think, I'm going to have to sit down. This is the way our mothers did in the olden days, is they said, well, I'm going to sit down and have a cup of coffee and read, or I'm going to have a piece of pie. And they could each have a piece of pie in those days, and no one got fat. Seems like it doesn't work that way anymore. And so I think, I'm going to have to sit down. So I'm going to have to relax. And just sit down. So I have shown you, this is just an example. I'm not saying everybody has to do this, but this is a magazine called Cottage Style, and it's a reprint, and I believe it's by Hoffman Media. And I have to tell you something about Hoffman Media. You know how you see these gorgeous magazines that you'd like to have, but maybe you can't afford them, and then the next month, of course, they're gone. And I've asked people that work at grocery stores and news magazine places, what happens to the old magazines like from last month? And they say, oh, they just tear them up, or they tear off the cover and they send them to somebody on recycling or something. Well, Hoffman Media keeps them, and you can go get them for $5 if they're out of date, like a 2019, 2018, 2017, clear down, they have the most beautiful magazines, worth keeping. I call them books, but they're just worth keeping. There are no ads in them. They're not full of trashy pictures or anything. But I just wanted to show you an example of how I would look at a magazine like this if I were little. Because we had books and magazines, and we like to just look at them. And my own daughter, I've seen her when she was real little. She would just open a magazine that I had in a stack of ones that I was saving, and she would just like to look at them and stare at the pictures. And there were some that I wished I'd kept, but I hadn't realized that she was looking at them. And when it came time to move or something, I got rid of them. And in those days, the pages weren't very quality compared to today. Now, I just want to show you one of the pictures in here. I've shown this to you before, but it's kind of like Ideals magazine. But here's a scene of, it just looks like a table with some tea time things and some jam and some things to eat and a vase of flowers. And what I would do is to relax, I'll just sit and look at it page by page and think, okay, what do I see on there? And I would say to myself, well, hey, I could make a scene like that on my table. I think I've got an old table like that. I think I've got a little tray or something that could be used for a tray. Sometimes I'll use they're called charger trays, you know, that you put a plate on. They're like a placemat, only they're called chargers. I'll just use those for a tray. Or I will say, I bet I could do something like that next to my seating area. And I'll just look and see to get myself some inspiring ideas. Now, I have heard people say they won't look at anything like this because it makes them want things. It's not like that with me because I'm old enough to know that if I start getting stuff, then I have to find a place to put it. So I don't look at it as, oh, I can't have this. I look at how can I substitute this? How can I create these scenes and these vignettes? And so I always like to sit down and relax. And so I think it's really important to teach children to look and to see what they can see, whether it's in a printed page or outside. Now today I also want to read a little bit to you from the last, I think this will probably be the last I will read from Up From Slavery by Booker T. Washington. I wish he was still here. I just really liked what he had to say. And I think that this sort of thing would help with child training, especially teenagers and older children. And if you were forced to homeschool because you just, not your choice, but needing to know more about it because of the situation, this is really a great homeschooling book because it showed how he had to go through certain things first before he could teach them heavier things. And the main thing I think he had to teach them was how to live, how to eat, how to bathe, how to be neat and tidy and clean. And that's what I found out with homeschooling too, that those things were more important. Those things were so important because it defines their humanness, and it touches their senses as to what is important. Remember the last time I read to you, he talked about they couldn't have missing buttons, they couldn't have oil stains and grease stains on any of their clothing, and how important this was, their personality, their personal self, their personal appearance, their hair, their skin, their clothing, how this is important. This has changed, hasn't it? Because now, of course, people just like to throw on anything, then show up. And then everything's about the intellect. Everything's about, well, let's be smart. Let's go to school. Let's learn things. But nothing about your person. And this is so important. And girls especially used to enjoy going to these classes that maybe some other lady in the community or in the church would put on to help them learn to have better posture, have to learn to dress properly and to match up their outfits and to look graceful and to not look like they had their clothes thrown on with a pitchfork, as whoever it was that wrote Robinson Crusoe described somebody as looking as though she had thrown her clothes on with a pitchfork. So I want to read a little bit about this in an effort to not be so conceited. The world has decided that clothing doesn't matter, except it does. they're selling it to you. It's just, and it looks casual, but it's all designed to bring you down to the lowest level of beauty and decency. But you can overcome that, you know, even if you can't sew. There are ways of dressing to make you feel more put together and motivated and inspired about what your life is all about and what you're doing. And I do have several people on my blog roll that teach these kind of things. So now, Booker, if you just come here for the first time, Booker T. Washington, which is a book I'd recommend for all public schools. If things are going to change in the public school, I'd recommend they put him back in there, and that I could actually write a workbook for them if they want me to on this, so that they could learn from it. I think the teachers need to go to new teachers' schools and learn what I'm teaching you, and I'm teaching all of you grandmothers. I'm homeschooling you, so don't ever say that you weren't. I wish I had been homeschooled, because you are being homeschooled. And so this is for you. And so I'm going to start here. Remember last time I read about how he insisted on cleanliness. Well, that was the way I was in our home. Our children had to come to the table for a lesson, something that we'd been studying. Well, could they please get a shower, comb their hair, and come to the table with clean clothes that were buttoned, and that shirts tucked in, and no hats, and with that smell good and were cheerful? Could they come? Because this is not just about learning something and cramming kids' heads full of facts. It's about developing their character and making them love life and making them want to do their best for their families and for the Lord. So here is probably the last that I'm going to read of this, and then we're going to go on to some other things. I'm waiting for my Anne of Green Gables book to come in the mail. I ordered a new one because I've had several copies over the years, and now that I have descendants, they've been redistributed. The students who came first seem fond of memorizing long and complicated rules. Now this is where he talks about how these students, and I want to talk to you a little bit about this too if you're very young too. It's very tempting when you're very, very young to get interested in intellectual things and to come across, or spiritual things, and just to come across as extremely smart and spiritual while you neglect other things. And Christ talked to the Pharisees about this, about how they neglected weightier things of the law while they were trying to obey all these rules. And the weightier things were things like your duty, your obligation, your love, and kindness and care for other people. The students who came first seem to be fond of memorizing long and complicated rules in grammar and mathematics. I've seen that in the McGuffey Readers and in some of the arithmetic books that were reproduced and put in homeschool catalogs, and I'd order them, and then the rules were just like, what? There were so many rules you had to read. And I even heard about one student that went to a college, actually quite recently, and they were wanting him to read a book on footnotes. It was so boring, but had little thought or knowledge of applying these rules to the everyday affairs of their life. One subject which they liked to talk about and tell me that they had mastered in arithmetic was banking and discount. I can imagine what it would feel like, you know, coming from a very impoverished home myself, how attractive it seemed to discuss a highfalutin subject, because it kind of brought you out of your poverty, and sometimes poverty was equated with ignorance, and so we wanted to be smart and well dressed. One subject which they liked to talk about and tell me that they had mastered in arithmetic was banking and discount, but I soon found out that neither they nor almost anyone in the neighborhood in which they had lived had ever even had a bank account. In registering the names of the students, I found that almost every one of them had one or more middle initials. When asked what the J stood for in the name of John J. Jones, it was explained to me that this was part of his entitles. Most of the students wanted to get an education because they thought it would enable them to earn more money as school teachers. Notwithstanding what I have said about them in these respects, I have never seen a more earnest and willing company of young men and women than these students were. They were all willing to learn the right thing as soon as it was shown them what was right. I was determined to start them off on a solid and thorough foundation so far as their books were concerned. I soon learned that most of them had the merest smattering of high-sounding things that they had studied. While they could locate the desert of Sahara or the capital of China on an artificial globe, I found that the girls could not locate the proper places for the knives and forks on an actual dinner table, or the places on which the bread and meat should be set. Now, in those days, you have to realize this was the late 1800s, and this was a very important social concept and practice, that you were actually considered quite ignorant and out of place if you didn't know these things. I had to summon a good deal of courage to take a student who had been studying cube root and banking and discount and explain to him that the wisest thing for him to do was first thoroughly master the multiplication table. Now, I've told you what I feel about memorizing, so I wrote the multiplication tables and I pasted them in the back of their math book, and I said, whenever you come across where you have to find out what 5 times 6 is, you go back here and you look at it, and there's your answer. You write that down. After doing that a number of times, they had just all automatically memorized it. The number of pupils increased each week until by the end of the first month there were nearly 50. Now you have to realize with this school at Tuskegee, it was a boarding school, and it was teaching them about life, not just about banking and grammar. It was teaching them everything. This is what homeschool was all about. He had to teach them how to live and how to conduct their time, how to behave when they had free time. Even that's what you do. You know, when you're raising children, you're teaching them how to be wise about their free time and how to make good judgments. And this is all about raising children in a way. Many of them, however, said that they could only remain for 2 or 3 months. They wanted to enter a high class and get a diploma the first year as possible. That's interesting, that they didn't want to start at one of the lower grades because they wanted to take a higher grade and then get a diploma. At the end of the first 6 weeks, a new and rare face entered the school as a co-teacher. This was Miss Olivia A. Davidson, who later became my wife. Miss Davidson was born in Ohio and received her preparatory education in the public schools of that state. When little more than a girl, she heard the need of teachers in the South. She went to the state of Mississippi and began teaching there. Later, she taught in the city of Memphis. While teaching in Mississippi, one of her pupils became ill with smallpox. Everyone in the community was so frightened that no one would nurse the boy. Miss Davidson closed her school and remained by the bedside of the boy night and day until he recovered. While she was at her Ohio home on her vacation, the worst epidemic of yellow fever broke out in Memphis, Tennessee, that perhaps has ever occurred in the South. When she heard of this, she at once telegraphed the mayor of Memphis, offering her services as a yellow fever nurse, although she never had the disease. Miss Davidson's experience in the South showed her that the people needed something more than mere book learning. She heard of the Hampton system of education and decided that this was what she wanted in order to prepare herself for better work in the South. The attention of Mrs. Mary Hemingway of Boston was attracted to her rare ability. Through Mrs. Hemingway's kindness and generosity, Miss Davidson, after graduating at Hampton, received an opportunity to complete a 2-year course of training in the Massachusetts State Normal School of Framingham. Before she went to Framingham, someone suggested to Miss Davidson that since she was so very light in color, she might find it more comfortable not to be known as a colored woman in this school in Massachusetts. She at once replied that under no circumstances and for no consideration would she consent to deceive anyone in regard to her social identity. And you know, this is her racial identity. This is so important because God created each one of us in our identity with the color and marks on our skin, and even what we would consider the flaws. And it's an identity. It's a way of identifying, and no one should think that they need to alter it so much that that they are going after being the same. And there's no such thing as the same anyway. Nobody's the same. Even identical twins aren't really identical, I don't think. So I think it's really important to thank God for your identity and for your nationality and for the time that you were born in, and ask Him to use you in that. As a matter of fact, I mentioned last time that I came here that all of us need to ask God to use us in a way that we could help in some way in the next phase of life on this earth, and to come out of this whole thing in 2020 better, more talented, more knowledge, more educated, stronger, and like I always say, stronger, younger, and smarter, and better in some way than we were before. Soon after her graduation from the Framingham Institution, Miss Davidson came to Tuskegee, bringing into the school many valuable and fresh ideas as to the best methods of teaching, as well as a rare moral character and a life of unselfishness that I think has seldom been equaled. No single individual did more toward laying the foundations of the Tuskegee Institute so as to ensure the successful work that has been done there other than Olivia A. Davidson. Miss Davidson and I began consulting as to the future of the school from the first. The students were making progress in learning books and in developing their minds, but it became apparent at once that if we were to make any permanent impression upon those who had come to us for training, we must do something besides teach them mere books. Well, this is what homeschooling is all about, and this is what I'm doing for you. You have to know something about life other than what comes from books, and it comes from acquiring experience, and also from living and observing. The students had come from homes where they had no opportunities for lessons that would teach them how to care for their bodies. With few exceptions, the homes in Tuskegee in which the students boarded were but little improvement upon those from which they had come. We wanted to teach the students how to bathe, how to care for their teeth and clothing. We wanted to teach them what to eat, and how to eat it properly, and how to care for their rooms. Aside from this, we wanted to give them such a practical knowledge of some one industry, together with the spirit of industry, thrift, and economy, that they would be sure of knowing how to make a living after they left us. We wanted to teach them to study actual things instead of mere books alone. This is homeschooling. You don't want them to leave having a vast knowledge of history, a vast knowledge of science, because that's not going to help them unless they become teachers themselves. But it's not going to help them to earn a living in other ways, and so they have to learn about life. And we had the two books, I showed these to you before, by Wayne and Emily Hunter, the Man in Demand book, telling, they taught through cartoons, but the young man wanted to get an interview, but he was slouching, and his shirt was misbuttoned, and then it showed, how he could be more successful if he dressed properly, if he bathed, if he had good elocution. And then it was the Christian Charm course for the girls, which was really effective in teaching them how to groom themselves, how to take care of their nails, how to dress, how to fix their hair, how to talk to people, how to have manners at the table. Now, a lot of people are put off by that word charm because the proverb says, charm is deceitful and beauty is vain. But she called it the charm course, and it has nothing to do with deceit or vanity. It was really a good practical book called the Christian Charm course by Emily Hunter. and then there was Man in Demand by Wayne Hunter. Very, very good books to help children grow up and learn how to approach other people, approach life, and do a good job. We found that most of our students came from the country districts where agriculture was some form or other and the main dependence of the people. We learned that about 85% of the colored people of the Gulf states depended upon agriculture for their living. Since this was true, we wanted to be careful not to educate our students out of sympathy with agricultural life so that they would be attracted from the country to the cities. In other words, you didn't want to take them from the farms and send them to the cities when that is also such a needed area. That is what happened to some of the small towns in Kansas, is that the farmers became very well off, and they wanted their children to be educated, so they sent them to these universities and colleges. And of course, the children didn't want to go back to the farms. They wanted to get other types of jobs. And so the little towns just folded up, and you can drive through them today, and they're just like ghost towns, and the malls are empty, and there's no one there to run the shops or the soda shop. And it's kind of sad. And I remember one little town in Kansas, right after we were married and we were on our wedding journey, we went to this little town because my husband had worked on his uncle's farm every year of his life, I guess, in this town. And there was a soda shop there, and we had a malt. And it was at the old-fashioned, it kind of looked like a scene in the Jimmy Stewart movie called It's a Wonderful Life. And there's no one there now. There's no one there to operate that. No one interested in it, because these people became educated, and they didn't know how to. They weren't interested in the land. Or the small town. Isn't that sad? So anyway, he did not want to do that. This Booker T. Washington wanted to be careful not to just take them away from the agriculture. We didn't want to take them out of agricultural life so that they would be attracted from the country to the cities and yield to the temptation of trying to live by their wits. We wanted to give them such an education as would fit a large proportion of them to be teachers, and at the same time cause them to return to the plantation districts and show the people there how to put new energy and new ideas into farming, as well as into the intellectual, moral, and religious life of the people. All these ideas and needs crowded themselves upon us with seriousness that seemed well nigh overwhelming. What were we to do? We had only the little old shanty and the abandoned church, which the good colored people of the town of Tuskegee had kindly loaned us for the accommodation of the classes. Excuse the noise. We have hay trucks going by and wheat trucks going by and everything. The number of students was increasing daily. The more we saw that our efforts were reaching, to only a partial degree, the actual needs of the people whom we wanted to lift up through the medium of the students, whom we could educate and send out as leaders. The more we talked with the students who were coming to us from several parts of the state, the more we found that the chief ambition among a large proportion of them was to get an education so they would not have to work any longer with their hands. This is one thing that homeschooling was so careful of, that taught me, was that children had to learn to grow something if it was in a pot, and have to learn to do something that was of some kind of labor to make something. The boys learn to use hammer and nails, learn to do something, and that they'd have a white collar job and a blue collar job. This is illustrated by a story told of a colored man in Alabama who one hot day in July, while he was at work in a cotton field, suddenly stopped. Now this is the previous sentence, which was saying that their chief ambition was to get a large amount of education so they wouldn't have to work so hard. He said there was a colored man in South, and this is just kind of like a joke that they told around, that the cotton field was so hot, and he suddenly stopped, looked toward the skies, and said, "Oh Lord, the cotton is so grassy, the work is so hard, and the sun so hot, that I believe I am called to preach. And then later on in this book, I'm not going to be able to read all of it, but later on he warned people, he warned them, he talked about classes he had for them, and warned them of trying to get out of work by going into the ministry. And he had to explain to them how hard that ministry was, because you can't depend on your contributions like you could on your labor. And how so many of them thought that if they became preachers, that they would be free from work. And I guess personally, having been a preacher's wife for so many years, I'm telling you, it's a very nervous, anxious thing sometimes to think about how your support could dry up. And so he was just warning them to to think ahead a little bit, because you could actually probably starve. So I'm going to stop reading that, because he goes into how he had to finance everything. And that's the thing too about preaching too, is you have to finance your work, and you have to keep the finance coming in. So you've got to keep people interested in, whether by a newsletter or by making speeches, and that's another part that's aside from the actual ministry. So I'm finished reading that for now. I don't think I'll go back to it. But it's just a marvelous book. It had so many ideas. It just struck home with me. And so I want to talk about one more thing before I quit, and that is this idea that the economy is somehow something that's wicked. The word economy. And a lot of religious people get that idea that the economy, they shouldn't be interested in the economy. But the economy does not contradict God's word or his purpose for us in life. And it started at the beginning. He gave Adam a job, and it was to tend the garden. And then also later on, and of course, if he tended the garden, of course, things would work out and grow, and they would have food. And then later on told Adam that he would work for his, earn his bread. And that's, when you earn something, you work for something. You work for some kind of payment. And that's just natural. It's just natural. If people were left alone, they would soon find a way to create an economy naturally, because it's all based on the needs of the human being. And so it actually, I think, came from God. And if you go on, if you can also go through the whole Old Testament, find how many times money was exchanged or money was given, and even God asked the people to contribute, to make a contribution, and even if it wasn't money, and to the work of God. And so there is, you go to the New Testament and you just read the Sermon on the Mount, and it's so many times referred to wages, referred to work, referred to being wise in investing money. And so you can see that God is concerned with it. And the honest exchange of money for a product, or the honest exchange of money for labor, is just natural, and it should be. When a political power comes in and says we don't need money and nobody has to work, that goes against God's economy, because what they're doing is destroying the economy, and that's against God's law, because he created it. As a matter of fact, in the New Testament, it talks about giving generously and being generous to others. And it says, remind the rich in this world to be generous. And we have to support the work of the church too. And also having an economy helps us respect others and to function in the neighborhood and to function in the family too. So the original purpose of the economy, which was created by God, was not based on greed. It was based on need, and people who worked would receive a greater blessing than people who didn't. And the Bible talks about the sloth and about people who wouldn't work because they were afraid of different things, and they just wouldn't work. And so it's just the economy is biblical, and I don't think that we can make a case that the economy is wicked or things like that. You know, you hear all that. People get some strange religious ideas sometimes, but I don't see any. There are warnings in the Bible about dishonesty and false weights and measures, and um, there are warnings about being loving money too much, and but it doesn't say money is bad. It just says the love of money is bad. And so I wanted to stop there now and talk to you a little bit about something that ladies used to do in the olden days to keep their faces firm. And I just remembered this. I was in the bathroom and I had some oil on my hands, and I thought, I wonder how that still works. But they used to, I think they used cold cream. I'm not sure what the ingredients of cold cream were, and I wish I'd brought some kind of oil with me to show you. But they used to do this to under their chins, down their neck, and they would rub this oil or cold cream, and this would keep they thought, kept their necks firm, and their just keep from sagging. And then they'd rub a little of, I guess it was cold cream, and they always would rub around the edges of their eyes like this, and right in here too. And they also made faces. They did face exercises, like, or they'd smile in an exaggerated way, or just make use their facial muscles in so many ways. You could probably find an old book that had this in it, but I just had thought about that, and I thought I'd let you know that you could still do that if you want to. Now we get a little furrow up here sometimes, and they would just sit there, and rub their faces. And my mother stayed young looking for a long, long time, and she did that. Sometimes I saw her. It just became automatic to sit there and do this. So I just thought that would be an interesting little piece of historical trivia for you. Ladies, I hope you got something done. I tried to speak for an hour here. I did forget a couple of things, but I wanted to say how glad I am to be back and to talk to you. And I hope to be here more often. I'm always thinking if I could just get my notes in a perfect outline, and if I could speak more fluently. When I'm ready, I'll come back, but it never works out that way. I always hope I'm smarter. Always hope I'm younger and thinner. It doesn't work out that way. Anyway, ladies, I hope you have a wonderful day and that you got a lot done. And I don't mind if you want to leave me a comment and tell me what all you did while you were listening. Now, this is fruit harvest season now, and I have plums. And when I'm listening to something, I will process the plums, the pears, the apples, and the blackberries. And it's interesting about blackberries around here. They grow wild in this country, and they're absolutely delicious, but they can get all over your house and just destroy your house, and you have to constantly be clipping them back. And when you find blackberry products in the stores, they're extremely expensive, and I'm looking at these wild blackberries thinking, how can they sell them for such a high price when they're such a nuisance? But that's what I'm processing now. So ladies, I hope you have a wonderful day, and don't forget to breathe, pray, and create. And don't forget to find some stretch exercises to do and some breathing exercises. If you find yourself with taking short breaths and real feeling of tightness and shallowness, then you're going to have to stop and learn to breathe. And most people don't breathe. They think of as something that is like the news, or something unpleasant, or something that is not for certain and it worries them. They stop breathing. You find yourself holding your breath a lot, and that's not good for you. So do find some breathing exercises and some stretch exercises, and go to your exercise room and go to your other places. I've got a little mini mall going on here where each room, I have my little office room, and each room, if there's no one occupying it, which is rare. But I hope you have a lovely day, and God bless you. Remember to start your day with prayer and to get dressed. I'll talk to you later. Have a lovely day. Be sure to listen to the nature videos that I will post on this particular post, and also I'll try to include a hymn that will replay in your mind. So have a lovely day. God bless. I'll see you next time. Bye.